and his brothers a second time around. How many of you are actually reading what is in the book? Okay. When it comes to the vocabulary, has anybody learned anything?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the vocabulary is Old English, and so...
Okay. All right. I want to use this word. I read it this morning, and it was...
Is it absence or something?
No. It was... Yeah, maybe I was reading it in another lesson.
Peradventure?
No.
Abomination?
Drift.
Drift?
Yeah. You get the drift of it.
Drift. D-R-I-F-T, but it's on here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Does everybody understand if I say, did you get the drift of what I'm telling you? Who does not understand that?
Like saying...
Johnny,
I didn't ask you. I said, do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
Do you get the message, the point of it?
The ins and outs.
Okay, this is, okay, have you ever heard the tenor? I understand the tenor of that conversation.
No.
Okay, what does that mean? That they're singing high tenor? Do you get the general idea? Okay. Many times, okay, Miguel referred to it as Old English. But in all honesty, I go back to what I said about 2 weeks ago. Pardon? I'm on lesson 7.
But we are in lesson 7 and it's not there.
Yes, it is. In tenor. In tenor.
General drift.
No, we're talking about drift.
Yeah, in tenor, the definition.
But I go back to what I said 2 weeks ago.
But drift is not only...
Listen to what I'm saying. Tenor is not Old English either. I go back to what I said. And I even shared it with my husband. And I hear him talking on the phone sometimes with ministers from up north. And he's searching for the right word. And I know why. The English we speak down here. I know you want me to keep it quiet.
That's what they're saying.
I think they're too loud.
The English we speak down here is very simple. Right, Sister Grant? Sister Grant is a reader.
It is very simple.
Sister Green.
She got married.
Sister Grant is a reader. Paul was a teacher, and he's a reader also. So my point is this: we consider it Old English because we're not using it down here, but these are words that are actually used in the vocabulary of most people in the United States. And we don't know them. Therefore, if they happen to be used in a sermon, let's say we had a visiting evangelist or whatever, and they would use them, you would not understand what he was trying to say unless you knew how to understand the context of which is what drift was for you.
No, drift I knew. Tenor I didn't know, but I used context clues to pretty much.
When
I know what it was.
Sentence, yeah,
when you use a sentence. Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of people don't do that. It was referring to that, and I didn't plan it this way. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was in the store, and
You don't even...
I'm a morning person, very much a morning person. And I'm in the store real early, and there's this guy in front of me, and he turns around and he looks at me. Of course, I had on my boots so I could walk, and he turns around and he nods his head. That's a gentleman's greeting sometimes from up north, in case you don't know that too, especially
I couldn't hear you.
They nod, you're driving down the road and they nod your head, wave. That's their greeting. They don't have to say good morning or how are you or whatever. So you got in the country. Now, David, take a pill. I did. He nodded his head, so I said good morning to him. And then he turned around and he looked me up and down again. He says, "Boy, it sure is good to hear someone speak English in here." And this is my point in driving it all home. It's that, yes, it's Old English, but it is still English that I guarantee you use it with the educated person. Just speaking with teachers, college grads, and whatever, you would use those words and they would truly understand. That's why it is very good. I grew up with this Bible class, and it helped me in my vocabulary. I learned words that most students in my class from out of the country didn't know, because it's amazing. And I was thinking about this yesterday as I was reading the vocabulary, and I thought to myself, you know, God has a way of enriching our lives in areas that we don't even, they're not spiritual. You understand what I mean?
Yes.
In other words, He teaches us manners. He teaches us vocabulary. Even the Spanish Bible, when it's read correctly, you learn so many words in it that you didn't know before. And yesterday my husband was referring back to someone I was talking to. He says, that word is in the dictionary. And it's a real word, because people don't think it is. But the point here is that how God, I bring it always over to what God can do, is because what God teaches us through His Word, we learn. And I even go back in my history. This is way off the wall today, but I go back in history, and how many, Abraham Lincoln is the first one we can think of. And many, many people in the olden days, they learned to read, and when they spoke, they sounded educated. But where did they start learning to read? Anybody in here know? The Bible. The Bible was what they started learning to read. Yes, Miguel.
Let me just
Correct
clarify.
yourself.
No, clarify. By no means was I trying to diminish what your emphasis or your point of what you were trying to say.
I'm just trying to get you this way.
So please, everybody understand, right?
Miguel has a problem
You
with
get the
things.
tenor of what I'm saying, right? Okay.
All righty, Joseph. Let's get down to our lesson. Genesis 42 and 1. Okay. Already we have seen how God has been watching over Joseph and how He is turning things around already. Does God do things immediately? No. Does God answer prayer immediately? No. But God knows what He has for us. And just for Joseph alone, he was already turning things in such a way that what was the brothers thought was okay, now was evil for them, and what had been evil for Joseph was turning out the way that God wanted to. And then also we see already where there is a fulfillment taking place of the visions, the promises that were given to Joseph. And then also we see that God is working out His purpose in Joseph's life. So now as we come to Genesis 42 and 1, now when Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do you look upon one another? What did he mean by that? Why do you look upon one another, Martin?
Are we in 43 and 2?
Yes,
40,
he's doing a
42
review.
and 1.
She's going back to. She has to teach us manners. So her going.
Because they're looking at the chapter before as you review and you get into the story today.
Okay. But you go to 42 and 1 and you look it up in your Bible and you find it there. Right? Jeanette? Okay, why do you look upon one another? Why would Jacob say this to his sons?
I would say to my children too, where he's sitting there, like, doing nothing.
Okay, in other words, he's trying to tell them, while you're sitting there doing nothing, why are you talking about this among yourself? You know where the grain is, go get it. Okay, and it came to pass, when they had eaten up the grain that they brought out of Egypt, their father said unto them, go again, buy us a little food. Why did he act so ignorant? Brother T? Why was he acting so ignorant? And now 42 and 2.
Right, so you're going back to Dr. Policy already. We are they were complaining, telling it's our fault. You know, the guilty and that's where we left
No, yeah, but we're going to start now where they're already back in their land. They've already eaten up all the grain. And now they're arguing among themselves, talking among themselves. And Jacob is saying, why are you sitting around? You know where the grain is. So why here in 42 and 2 is Jacob asking the question, I'm in 43.
Yeah.
I'm reading 43.
So reading 43 too, lesson 6. That's what we're trying to do.
No, my bad. My bad.
43 too?
Because my book says 42.
We thought you were reviewing. That's what we're saying.
43 and 2 now.
Yeah.
43 and 2.
Yeah. Now, why did he say, go buy us a little food? Why did he act so dumb? No, 43. Let's go to chapter 43, verse 2.
Go again, buy us a little food.
Why is he saying that, Jeanette?
Because they ran out of food, but to me, he knew that he had to send Benjamin. He didn't want to send.
Okay, he didn't want to, but why does he kind of shove this aside?
That's when you don't want to do something. That's what you want to do. You don't want to give up his only son from the woman that he loved.
And these sons have initiative. They have to be pushed.
Okay,
So the first time he had to push them to go get food. Now the second time he had to push them to go get food.
because they
These
didn't.
commandantes were there, in other words, no more to eat.
All right. He said go and buy. Number one, Jacob, no matter how old he was, because he was an elderly person, he still was the leader. He was still in charge of his household. And number two is his sons had to do what he said. The sons already knew what the consequences were. They had to take Benjamin with them. Or Joseph said what? Which we'll read later on. He said, you'll not see my face. So in other words, don't bother to come because you're going to have to bring Benjamin if you want food. I don't know. They didn't have computers back then. So, how did Joseph know if they went to buy in another place where there were barns? Or was it all consolidated in one place? Somebody that knows their history better than me in that?
Hard for me to hear in the background.
Could
you repeat that again?
Okay, my question is, were there barns storing grain all over Egypt? Okay, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay,
There were.
then how come the brothers, because there was no computers, okay? How come the brothers couldn't go somewhere else in Egypt to buy the corn or the grain?
Because all the grain that was in Egypt, after the famine started, it was under Joseph control.
That's the only thing I can see too.
Below
That
knowing
they had to
Joseph,
go to one place to buy,
Farm
even
that
though
I
there
had,
was a storage house.
below Joseph, finish them off, go to the
You have to excuse my brain here, I go the weirdo again. He probably had an artist draw up all the pictures and pass it around and say, don't sell to these people. It's just something that's weird that comes to my mind. I imagine all kinds of
But
things.
don't say it's weird. It's very good. It's not weird. You're thinking.
But yeah, of course I think.
I know, but that's not weird.
But because people don't think like that.
It doesn't matter. You're special. In every good sense of the word.
sit on the front.
Okay.
Joseph wasn't stupid. Even though the grain was stored in other places, I'm sure he wanted all the money to come into Egypt. So they had a central place where they had to go first.
That's what common
And
sense
these
would
other
tell.
people could not sell on their own. It was Egypt's grain. So
And
they
the
had-
brothers knew there was only one place they could go, and that was only one place they could buy. Also, it could have been that they only sold, because we're gonna see some things later on. They only sold maybe to Egyptians in other warehouses, but it had to be bought from the people from the outside of a certain place. Because they actually did not have any kind of communion with the Hebrews. And we will include other nations too, because the Egyptians had their own beliefs in certain things too. So here we have the father saying, what are you waiting around for? Yet he himself knew it was going to be a cost. To me, it's like, help me here, boys. Help me to know what to do about this situation, but we've got to eat, or all of us are going to starve. So then in verse 3, Judah spake unto him, saying, the man did solemnly protest unto us, saying, ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Okay, they didn't call him the second in command or by his name. He had a name that Pharaoh had given him. But they said, the man. And if thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down. For the man said unto us, ye shall not see my face unless you bring your brother. Now, why here, as we get to this point in the lesson, what do you think, Wilmer, the feeling of these guilty brothers? Because already we see previously that because Joseph's poking them, that guilt had come to the surface again, and they began to talk about it. So, how do you think these brothers are dealing with situations in their minds and hearts about like this? About what they've got to do?
Well, I think it's been a long time since they've been feeling like that. I mean, you do something that severe, you gotta be feeling guilty the whole time. So now that they reached this point, just thinking about Benjamin, for example, like having to bring him, even Judah, for example, like he offered his kid. So I think they've grown from the time that they did the deed to that point. And I think now they are, like you said in the class before, since they had kids on their own, they understand more. So now they're really, they're truly repented. In my opinion, like I think they're truly repented, and now they're trying to live their life, even though they haven't confessed yet, or they're trying to do everything to satisfy that feeling of guilt.
In other words, they were willing to sacrifice what they had to sacrifice.
Right.
Because they knew that they'd been caught. Not by their fathers, but by God.
Right.
That God was going to take vengeance on them in some way or somehow. That's the way they looked at it, because they would look at Jehovah as a God that had vengeance. Yes, Carla?
I think they might have been so terrible.
I don't think they slept.
They knew he was God.
And I was thinking about as they ate the corn and the grain, whatever it was that they brought back, because it says we have consumed it, we have eaten it. Okay, if they had, every time they ate, they probably couldn't even eat very much of it, trying to make it stretch out and last, because they knew it was going to cost them. It would be like, you know, when you're feeling bad over something, not even if you're not feeling guilty, but when you're feeling bad over a situation or something, the food just, it's like it's repugnant to you. Just get it away from you. And to a certain degree, I think that every time they looked at that mush, they were thinking, we're going to have to go back if I eat too much. Or the time is going to be too soon, and it's going to cost us. We're going to have to hurt our father, take our brother. We don't know the consequences of Simone that is there. We don't know anything. So all this, I liken this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I liken this as like when we sin, even though God forgives us, we carry scars. And every once in a while, the wound is, or the scar is rubbed, and we remember. And this is what is happening. Even though they had a contrite spirit already, they began to feel that guilt, they began repentance in their hearts or in their minds, and why did you do this, and they had this attitude. There's that scar, any little thing was rubbing it, making them aware of it. This is what God does to help us to see. Even when we carry scars, without a doubt, every one of you in here have some sort of wound in your heart, your mind, somewhere, even maybe something that was physical or related to other people that you're carrying, that God forgave you, but you remember it. And this is part of the consequences of reaping. So therefore, these people, God is teaching us a lesson even through them before. Whatsoever man soweth, that he's going to reap. And even though God has forgiven us and we're not liable because it's covered by the blood, we still remember, or we still see the damage that was done. And therefore we're reaping to a certain degree, because when damage is done, sometimes it cannot be straightened out. He cannot change it. So these people, these men could not change the fact they sold Joseph. They couldn't go down and get him back. They couldn't go find no bones. They couldn't do anything. So they were reaping already. But I love, the reason why I told you that I like this lesson, when Judah speaks up. Let's go to 6 first. Wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell me the man whether he had yet another brother. In other words, why did you blab what was going on in the family? But Joseph was very wise, had wisdom, and he had knowledge. He had both. Because he asked point blank questions that they couldn't deny. And you might say, well, they all could have lied. But he already knew, and he knew how to get them. And how to ask him and bring it down. And then he says, bring your brother down, the last part. Then in verse 8 he says, and Judah said unto Israel, his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou and our little ones. For I will be surety. What's that word surety mean? Johnny?
Promise for sure, more.
No.
I kept promise.
Surety. This is your guarantee. I'm a surety. Surety for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee, set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. That's a big statement after what they had done. And this morning it so happened I was reading a devotional that had to do with the consequences of Judah. Now, I didn't have time to go back to the Bible to research and everything, but can somebody please tell me the problem that Judah had with his sons that married Tamar, was that during or after or before what he did to Joseph? I don't remember. After what he had done. Okay, so Judah was already getting consequences of what he had. He had sons that had already died. Then he did what he did. He was reaping, and without a doubt, and I'm not going to say that this is Bible because I don't know, but if you will study the different sons and the consequences that came to the different tribes, the things they had to go through. At that time, sometimes the sins of the fathers was passed down because of what the fathers had done. So they reaped what they sowed. For except we linger, surely now we have returned this second time. Okay, he had to take the blame. He had to do what he had to do. Now, Genesis 11, 43 and 11. Someone read that.
And their father Israel said unto them, if it must be sold now, do this. Take of the best fruits in the land in your vessels, and carry down the men a present, a little balm, and a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. And take double money in your hand, and the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sons, carry it again in your hand. Peradventure, it was an older son. Take also your brother and arise, go again unto the men, and God Almighty give you mercy before the men, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved.
All right, what does that show you about Jacob? There's something here that I want to drive your point on. When he had this attitude. He was willing to sacrifice. He was willing to sacrifice what was dearest to him to be able to keep the whole family intact. In other words, I'm willing to give up my baby so that your babies can live and my other sons can live. And I think about that, and I think about Christ did the same thing. He was willing to have the separation from the Father. He was willing to give that up for you and me. And I think about the fact that today, we as Christians, what are we willing to give up to be able to win souls? It's going to cost. If you truly are going to give your whole life to God and you're going to serve Him with everything, and I'm not saying you can't have a family. I'm not saying you cannot work in the job that you're working on. I'm not saying that, but it will cost you somehow. Because God wants to see if you're really willing to serve Him with all your heart. Does He give it back to you? Many times He does give it back to you. Exactly what you gave up. And give you more. But there is a sacrifice that all of us are going to have to make. And I feel that God does this. This is me. You can each one have your own experience. But God does this many times just to see how willing we are to see others saved. We preach, we talk, we express ourselves about compassion, about witnessing, about doing all these things. But it takes a sacrifice. It takes a giving. And many times that's where we as human beings, we hang up. Jacob could have been, I think the word is redundant, he could have just said, I'm not.
Is the belt. I knew it.
I'm not. And he could have stood his ground, I won't, so they would have had to figure some other way out. But Jacob was willing to sacrifice the closest thing to himself. And I ask you this morning, what are you willing to sacrifice that's the closest to you?
Well, what he did reminded me of, or reminds me of Esther, when she was going before the king, and she said, she thought, for my people I'm going, and if I perish, I perish. So she was willing to sacrifice for her people. What an example.
Okay, it cost Esther, in case you didn't hear him, because he got a little noisy over here. The background sound from over here is bad. Okay, Esther, if I perish, I perish. And this is the same attitude. If we don't get anything else out of the rest that we're going to cover, what we're covering already is Jacob. Jacob has to be honored. He gave it up. I've already lost one son. And that son I lost, actually, because of you. Boys, think about it. He did. He sent Joseph where? Where did Joseph go that he sent him off? Jacob sent him out. Where did he go? To look for the brothers to see about their welfare. Isn't that correct? And he made his horsemen, and he went on until he found them or whatever. And that's where they conspired to do what they did. So, because of you guys, I sent Joseph out to go find you. Now, because I'm going to save your lives, I'm going to have to once again sacrifice.
His first wife, he didn't get her, so he had to go an additional 7 years, so 14 years before he was able to get the one that was promised him after the first 7 years of waiting. So on top of he didn't give up his son.
Well, he was running from his brother Esau too at that time too, because he had him too. He had stolen what was not his. And to a certain degree, as he kept paying the price, he felt like he was probably paying his own price for what he had done. It behooves us not to sin against God, because it turned around and come back, no matter what. So there, well, I kept that thing, that devotion I was reading this morning, and it kept making emphasis, and kept thinking about it, that man can't do vengeance on us many times. God will take care of things in His own way to try to bring us. In the case of Jacob, in the case of Esau, in the case of Isaac, in the case of the brothers, all of this was God's plan to lead. He used the bad to turn into good, to make the good work, to be able to bring the next generation. God.
I was watching some very good TV yesterday afternoon. I was AHC, I guess that stands for History Channel of some sort. And it was about evil, the evolution of evil. Very good documentaries, the best I've ever seen. I've seen many of them, especially in World War II. But it was about Stalin, the Georgian who became head of the Soviet Union. It was about Lenin, but basically Stalin, and also another series about Hitler and other people like Mao and so on. But when you think in terms of the present day situation with the school shooting, everybody is saying, oh, it's mental illness, or it's guns, or whatever. But they're ignoring, the media almost always are ignoring the fact that it's evil. It's a spiritual malignancy that comes from sin, and repeated sin, which gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Even Stalin was a cute little baby at one time, and he killed 70 million people, or his life resulted in that many people being killed. Hitler, the same. Mao, the same. And so, in a sense, when you said what you said, I thought all sin is actually a kind of mental illness, because it is the most stupid thing you can do to rebel against God and to sin and to go your own way. But that doesn't excuse us from our culpability. But it is, anytime you're tempted to sin, remember, that's the stupidest thing you can ever do. No matter how attractive the wrappings of it.
The bottom line is evil. And the evil, if you sin against God, that's another lesson for us this morning to think about all week long, is that choosing, we have a choice every day. We choose every day whether we do the good or whether we halfway good. Because I'm not going to say that you're going to just turn around and good to evil. No, you're halfway good. You begin to wishy-washy. But it behooves us to do what God wants us to do, because there is a consequence. Somewhere down the line, you too, you haven't had children yet, you do something evil in God's sight, somewhere down the line, you'll pay. Somewhere. Because it just works that way. Because we cannot, and that's something that one time one person came and they got saved. Thank God they're still saved today. But when they came, they're like, my life is like, it's a mess. I don't see how I can get it straightened out. I said, well, as long as God forgives you, it's going to take God your lifetime to take every one of those pieces of spaghetti that you have in that plate and straighten them all out again. Because that's just what sin does. It makes one big fat mess. And God has to straighten it out. And many times we pay the consequences for what we have done, Him trying to straighten it out to get us in the right way that we're supposed to go. But it does take time. Now, in Joseph's brothers' case, they are going to pay and pay dearly. I don't think we're even going to try to go into the next section. So we'll pick it up next week. We'll have to read it. We'll pick it up. Okay. The father commands them to take everything. Okay. He tells them to take food. And now, this is one of the things that you help me out here, okay? He tells them to take honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, almonds. Now, when I think of famine, I think of nothing.
That's exactly what I'm telling you. Always contact as well. That sounds like food.
Okay, it sounds like food, but you could not feed your animals with this. And you could not, and without a doubt, these were probably things that they had derived from other places or had stored themselves for a period of time. But they were able to take these things, or they did trading in other ways to get these things.
That sounds like a vegan diet.
And then they had plenty of money. They weren't broke. So they took double their money, plus they took back what they had. That's true. That's 3 times.
But Jen, sister did that, so.
Because then when they killed them and ate them, there was no more animals to eat either.
God had given him so much, it was so rich.
Yeah, but see, you've got to remember how big their tribe was. What was it? 400 went down?
No, at that time he had 70.
70 went down?
70.
Okay. But it takes, what we would call rich, would not necessarily have been enough to sustain them for 70 years. You start killing your animal off, that's the first thing that you don't do. Anybody knows it's going to be a survivor. You don't kill your horse. And then you don't kill your sheep that's going to give milk to your babies. So you have to feed them. So without a doubt, they had access to other things. It's always been, I was wondering if somebody had studied a little bit deeper than me, why they had all these other things. You know, why is this here? But this is what they had to take down, because some of these things came from the Orient. There was also a trade going on for spices from other countries and things of that nature. So they had these things to take with them. And so the men took that present and they doubled their money in their hand in Benjamin, and rose up and went to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Now they put that all in one little verse, in verse 15. And there they packed up those mules, they loaded everything up, and then they put Benjamin. How that father must have felt to see that being torn from him. He probably felt like, I might as well start grieving now because I've lost him. But God had something great in store for both of them. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of the house. Now, to me, we read this and we say, oh, thank goodness. But if I had been a son and this happened to me, I would have been scared to death. Bring these men to my home. I don't think I would have been too happy to go to dinner. And slay and make ready, for these men shall dine with me at noon. So, the interpretation, remember, he's not speaking to them. It's not coming from Joseph. This is coming from the servant. He's telling them, okay, you over here, move over here. And then he goes and he tells them in Hebrew, the man wants you to dine with him today. Oh my goodness, I would have been so scared. The first thing I would have done was grab Benjamin and hold him as close to me as I could, trying to protect him from that, because they had no clue. Yes, Wilma.
Oh, I'm just wondering, I mean...
It makes you think.
No, I mean, but in my mind, I'm like, what's the big deal? Because, okay, first of all, like, I'm thinking, like, if I was Jacob, like, I'll be, why does he want to see my son? Like, what's the big deal? Like, why? How come? That's one. Like, I'm just thinking, like, and then number two is, he just wants to see my son. My other sons made a statement, and the man just wants to confirm that it's true. So just go, Benjamin, just go, and you're gonna come back. Why are they gonna kill you? I mean, I'm just thinking,
because he was afraid something would happen to Benjamin that had happened to Joseph. Because he still thought that Benjamin had been killed by wild animals.
but
Like you said, they don't have kids.
no, I know. Maybe that's.
You lost one kid, you have two kids, you lost one, you lost one. You don't want to lose the other.
But why would they lose him?
Why would they lose him? Because they didn't know what the consequence was going to be. Let's put it this way. Okay, let me just put it this way. When my two daughters take a vacation, they get in a plane and they go together, the whole 8 of them. I actually do a lot more praying for them than I do. You know why? Because if I lost all of them at one time, what would happen to me? I would grieve, my heart would grieve. Jacob is seeing the beloved son, the one he had bestowed. Now, Jacob was wrong as a father. But at the same time, some of the other sons hadn't proven themselves to be too good of a sons. Alrighty? And then he had the fact about Rebecca, his favorite wife. All right, so all this is coming into play in his emotions. So it's not just the fact of sending the son with the other sons. It's the fact that it was like, am I going to lose him too? That would be my fear. If this was, let's say I sent my child with Miguel. My fear would be, oh, I can use Miguel. Excuse me for using him. Okay, Miguel would have a fear of seeing both his children going to danger when he knows he has no more because he's running. He would fear, even though really we would look at it and say, there's no danger to him. This is normal. This is what he's got to do. You understand? You have to look at it like she said, you're not parents yet. When you get there, you'll understand that being torn from, especially when that love is there. Brother Carlos?
And also, this was a foreign nation. And in those days, foreign nations were very, very suspicious of other nations because there was a lot of conquest and, let me get your stuff, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of barbarism in those days.
How did they
As there
know?
are today, too. But
This man sees all these young men, these men strong and healthy. Take them into slavery. I want one more. I'm greedy. Look what I've done. Look what I've got. That's another way to look at it. Another way to look at it is the fact. And now we come down to the dinner. When I was talking about the dinner, and you said the customs. I was reading that this morning. It was. We haven't even gotten there, but there was 3 tables set in that house. Because the Egyptians, it was not their culture to eat with the Hebrews. Definitely not. They were unclean to them. Just like the Hebrews had unclean people from them, the Egyptians did not eat with the Hebrews. That's what makes it even so amazing that this man is inviting us to dine with him. Hello, we don't even eat together. It's not our custom. They don't like us. They despise us. They look down on us. And do you know why they look down on the Hebrews?
is it something to do with sheep?
Yep, because they were shepherds. That's why they gave them Goshen later on. Because they sent them far away because they didn't want them to live in it. That was unclean for these. We know a lot about the Hebrew custom, but we don't know so much about the pagans, but they had their own customs too. So here we find, very interesting to me, I would have, excuse the expression, wet my pants if they had told me to go to do it. I just would have looked for any way, can I vomit, can I do anything? I don't want to go. But they had to go. And they didn't know what they were going to expect. Here they had brought and done everything, and then they're told they have to go dine with him. This is what we're going to take up next week, as we find out.
Stay tuned. Join us at this station next week at the same time.
What I want you to see in the lessons is that Joseph is not an example to us because these things can happen in different ways for us. But God had